Quick heads up before we start the episode. There's about a minute of content early on where Jackson's microphone is having some odd issues. It clears up pretty quickly, so if you just want to skip ahead a minute, you can skip all of that or suffer through it. It's still intelligible. So sorry about that, but the remaining hour and 15 minutes of content is primo with no issues to speak of, so stick around.
Standing on that ledge, you think you're gonna fly. If you take that long last step, we'll have to say goodbye. Whoa, whoa.
Hello, and welcome to the Beating a Dead Horse. As always, I am your host, Sean McKinda.
And I am your host, Jackson Keller. Fuck you, Discord.
Yes. If you are just now joining us on the podcast, we had some audio issues in the beginning here that you missed by not being part of the stream. It was an exciting thing. Woo!
Hooray!
Ooh, that was some garbleness. But yeah, we're here to talk about fucking Danganronpa 2, and what a better way to begin the stream than with some just pure despair, as we cannot get our stream started in any sort of solid manner. It was a nightmare. So we're here now, though.
We need despair to raise our hopes. And if you play the game, you know what that means. And this is a hard game to talk about without spoilers. But it's good. So you should play this one, but play the first one first.
My friend, you are coming through as Mechamaru.
Am I really?
Yes.
Oh, no. Fuck me. Okay.
So now that we've had some more audio issues, we're back. And yes, Danganronpa 2 is hard to talk about without spoilers. But let's try. Let's talk about like our thoughts and feelings and just general motifs and stuff.
Sure, Sean. Let's get right into it. So, how do you feel about this game? I guess we should probably give our opinions on the first one as well, since that seems relevant.
Probably. I mean, if you haven't listened to our previous episode of the podcast where we talked about Danganronpa 1, you definitely should. But the general consensus is that it's a very, very good game. It's full of interesting plot twists, turns, characters that are lovable and hateable, and it's fucking wonderful. I would pretty much recommend it to almost anyone. If you are not fans of like the Japanese style, you might it might be a little bit of a harder sell. But like I think it's something that pretty much almost anyone can enjoy once you get past that. Danganronpa 2, I'm a little bit more conflicted on, because I really, really like this game as well. But I have a harder time in recommending it to people. Danganronpa 1 manages to be fairly innocuous in terms of its Japanese tropes and all that entails, looking at like the fan service and stuff like that. And Danganronpa 2 seems to lean into that, at least in the beginning, a little bit harder, which makes it a little rougher to be like, yeah, you should play this, because when like the first case is just a number of panty shots, it can be a little unfortunate.
I'm assuming we're gonna dive more into that particular case during spoiler talk. Yes.
Oh, we're not even gonna. We'll get back to that in like 3 minutes. There are things that must be discussed with that.
Perfect. Was that all that you wanted to mention, or should I let you finish?
At least as of right now, please take off.
Sure. So Danganronpa 2, I too would recommend Danganronpa 1 to pretty much anybody. If you don't like the anime aesthetic, I mean, my gut reaction is to tell you to get over it. But so get over it. Play Danganronpa 1. It's a great game. If you like mysteries at all, if you like adventure games, like point-and-click adventures, like thinky problem-solving games, it's the game for you. It's a real solid, fun time. Really, Danganronpa 1 was a game I had few qualms with, and the ones that I did were mostly about the ending and the meta elements, which, I won't go into too much here because obviously we're still in non-spoiler zone. And so then we have Danganronpa 2, which I also cannot recommend as easily. Not so much for the fan service, I don't really care about that, but the thing about it is that if I'm gonna do the classic Jackson thing, if I were to say that I'm gonna compare it to Metal Gear Solid, I think it's an appropriate comparison because Danganronpa 1 is a lot like Metal Gear Solid 1 in that it's focused a lot on like atmosphere and characters, and it does those things really, really well. And Danganronpa 2 is a lot like Metal Gear Solid 2 in that the writing's a little sharper overall, the ideas are more complex, the twists are a little more twisty, there's just a lot more going on. So I'm in a weird position with this game where I think overall it's very effective, and I especially like kind of the ending segments of this game more. However, I just overall wasn't as taken with the characters, the atmosphere, even though there are a lot of fun characters and it's got its own kind of unique vibe and aesthetic. It doesn't feel like the first game is this very oppressive atmosphere. Like you're genuinely trapped in this building and like you're in this high stakes death game where even though like mechanically it becomes pretty clear that like you're never gonna be on the chopping block as far as like getting killed goes, it does a good job of conveying that feeling. Like every locked room is a potential disaster waiting to happen. Like opening doors, there could be a body behind any doors. And just because the second one has this like freeform like island aesthetic, it's a nice change of pace, and I think that the game does good things with it, and it creates for a lot of unique setups. But I think that just in the moment to moment, it doesn't fill me with the same sense of like dread and like around every corner there's trouble waiting. So that's part of why I ultimately would say that I preferred the first game. The other part is just the characters I thought were like the plot involving those characters is really good, but like emotionally speaking, I found myself a lot less attached for one reason or another. I felt that the motivations and backgrounds weren't as strong, and I think part of that is that the like overarching meta plot is a much bigger deal this time around, and I think that sort of plays into it. However, that meta plot is very satisfying, and I think that, like I said, it's a little bit more thematically cohesive. There's a lot of things that this game does that I kind of wanted the first game to do. So it's weird. In a way, I think this game, each game has some strengths that the other one doesn't. However, in the core moment to moment, as far as setting up interesting mysteries with fun twists that are fun to try and think through and solve, both of them are very satisfying. This one even more so, I'd say.
I think that, like I went into this saying I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to people who are not as into the genre. But like, that's not to say that I didn't like it. Jackson's right in that they're very much mixed bags. It's really hard to kind of pin down one as better than the other. Because I think the first definitely had its baseline was consistently good. The second one, as I mentioned on stream when I was streaming this, and I've talked to a number of people about, when it's high, it's higher than the first. When it's low, it's lower than the first. And I just want to touch on what Jackson was saying with the characters and stuff. I think that the fact that they gave all of the characters a lot more bombastic personalities in the second is really nice, because like it helps fill the room. There's not as many characters that are just kind of off to the side, not really doing anything. So it's really nice that, all these bombastic personalities are out there. They're all really big. They're all in your face. But the first game allowed a lot of the more minutia of the personalities to come out in intimate moments. Like, I'm looking at Sonya, who I got to know quite a bit throughout the course of my time with the game, where the personality that you see in the trials and everything is one that's pretty static. But like when you get to know her personally, a lot more of her underlying qualms and concerns come out, which there's definitely some of that in the first game as well. But the difference is that I felt that a lot of those underlying qualms and concerns came out in little small moments, even within the trial. It wasn't just all about being big and in your face. Like there felt like there was some genuine people behind them, not just personalities. So they're really mixed bags. Like Jackson says it really well in that, like, for everything that one does right, the other one feels like it's lacking. And so it's really hard to necessarily put one over the other. They're very close.
And so I will say, I think that's a very good summary of kind of what we got going on here. The last thing that I sort of wanted to say in general, like if we're doing comparisons, is that I think another thing that sort of pushes the first game a little bit ahead in my mind is the freshness factor, which, you know, it can't be helped with this being a sequel at all. And I think that ultimately focusing on tightening up kind of the meta story was a smart move precisely for this reason. Is that in the first game, like if you listen to the previous episode we did about it, I talked a lot about my kind of personal experience sort of like inserting myself into the death game scenario and like making tactical decisions about like who I was going to hang out with and associate with, and like getting really invested and like who would betray me. Like I played Danganronpa for the heartbreak, and there is some good heartbreak in this that we'll talk about. But like I think that just by virtue of this being a sequel, like there was less of that me projecting myself into it, because now I know the game, like I know how this is going to go down, and I'm just more conditioned to kind of what the game sort of wants me to expect, which ends up again playing in its favor in a lot of ways when it ends up twisting those expectations on me. But as far as like just a raw, like again, I think this is why the atmosphere of the first one was so important to me. Like I found it really compelling to like imagine myself in this scenario and imagining the morality of the situation, and like trying to thinking about how you'd best survive, and just really letting this as a thought experiment play out. That's kind of one of the things I think that's fun about these sort of death game stories, is that it allows for a lot of room of like, what would I do in this scenario that's like so out there and far-fetched, but like what does this say about my moral values and my moral systems, and like what does this reveal about me and the way that I think, which I think certainly the first game did for me, which is ultimately one of the reasons I found it so compelling.
Plus, I think the big thing too is that Hajime actually has a character in this one.
Yes.
Makoto was much more of a blank slate that you could like put yourself onto, whereas Hajime has his own goals, and you know he strives for things that are beyond Makoto's desires.
And he has his own reactions to like certain characters, which like, so I guess comparing the two, like with Makoto, if you were gonna hang out during a day cycle with a more unsavory character, pretty much all you'd get is like, am I really gonna hang out with X? Like, what am I doing? But I feel like Hajime, like you say, he definitely is more of his own character, and so sometimes that character didn't quite align with what I was thinking. So
I mean, like hanging out with Gundam, he always goes like, "Can I really
Yes.
hang out with a man like Gundam?"
Exactly, and I'm thinking, of course we're gonna hang out with Gundam. Like this is an evil ninja man who trains hamsters to like do whatever he wants. Absolutely, we're gonna hang out with Gundam, Hajime.
He's a big softy. What are you doing?
Yeah. So, but no, I mean that definitely plays into it too. Is that and again, I think that it's weird because this is kind of the inverse MGS2 in a lot of ways, in that like you have the protagonist of the first game who is in a lot of ways more well defined with their own sort of backstory and baggage, in MGS, but in Danganronpa, Makoto's just there to be your insert vehicle. And that's kind of the role Raiden plays in MGS2 is the insert vehicle, but here Hajime is a lot more fully formed and has his own opinions on the characters and relationships outside of kind of what you, the player, are thinking, potentially.
Yeah, it's all a mixed bag. Like, it just kind of keeps going back to that. We should talk about something.
Yes, we should.
This is a thing. I owe my stream viewers something. And it will also, if you are listening to the podcast, I will be posting the link to this up in the Discord, the Beating a Dead Horse Discord. If you are unfamiliar, I mentioned that the beginning of the game has a lot more gratuitous panty shots to it. And an early case features one of them as a clue. Now, being who I am, I saw this and thought, there's no fucking way that this game actually wants the content of the image to be the clue. Like, it has something to do with something in the background of the image, or like the fact that the character is tripping over sausage links or something like that. Like, that has to be why this is here. How foolish I was. I made a bet that I kind of regret. And so if you're curious to see the outcome of said bet, I will be posting it in the Discord after the stream. Also, if you are in chat, enjoy. It is incredibly not safe for work. Please, for the love of God, do not open it around other people. I am so sorry.
Open it around your grandmama.
Yeah, it's a rough one.
I don't know what you're talking about, Sean. I think it's a masterpiece.
It's
High
something.
art.
Was there anything else we want to talk about before we dive into spoilers? Like, what do we want to say about the game? Like, I feel like we've talked about like the mixed bag of it, our comparisons to Dangan 1, gratuitous panty shots. What's left?
Yeah, characters. I guess if you want an overall like final statement, I still very much enjoyed my time with Dangan 2. I think it's very much worth playing if you've played the first one. This is not a series, I think, where you can just dive in at any point and have a decent experience. Like, this isn't like Zelda, where you can play any Zelda game in any order and it's pretty much fine. In order to really appreciate what this game does well, I think you have to have played the first one. And so I recommend them both.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you played the first one and you want more of it, this game is fucking wonderful. And Danganronpa is a great series in general. So, like, you're going to play it anyway, probably. Like, I can't imagine seeing the first one being like, oh, there's more? Nah, I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, is that this isn't the kind of sequel that's, like, hideously offensive or anything. Like, it's not, like... like you're not gonna play it and think like, well, I can't believe they went like that direction with it. Like, it not only has what you like about the first one, but it has enough to feel like not just a retread either, which I think is pretty high praise for a sequel.
Yeah, for sure. Do you want to talk spoilers?
Let's talk spoilers.
Cool. Before we do, I'm going to mention that next week we're going to be talking about Avengers Endgame, unsurprisingly, keeping up with our trend of talking about superhero movies as they come out. This will probably be towards the end of it, though. We're kind of burning out on them, and we'll see how many more we do after this. We've got a couple more that we're looking at, but it probably won't be too many.
Free me from this pain, big purple daddy. Free me from the pain of having to watch a Marvel movie.
Oh, snap me more, Snake. So yeah, let's talk spoilers. Case by case?
Case by case, and I should also mention that, like, I will probably be freely spitting out Danganronpa spoilers too. So just because it's hard not to compare them, because the similarities between the cases and the characters is a pretty important plot point. So
yeah, I mean, you can't really separate it. Like they're designed to work off each other and play with each other and all that good stuff. So.
Yeah, so let's go case by case. Because I think this game, I think as far as like the actual cases and the mysteries go, I think that this game starts us off on the right foot. As far as presenting a satisfying mystery with enough like twists and turns, in order to keep my interest.
Way harder than 11037 of the first game, which is about the easiest clue in the world. You're like, oh, okay, I know immediately who did it. So I'm really appreciative of the fact that they didn't just hold your hand through it again. Like, they basically expected you to have played the first, and they're not just, saying, look, this is who did it, now prove it. It's more of, you can't figure out who did it right away. You have to work through the clues. There's a slew of things that you need to pay attention to. It's not, there's no hand holding in this one, which is really nice because it basically respects the fact that you have played the first. And if you haven't played the first, you've made some sort of horrible mistake.
Yeah. Yeah. Please go back, especially because I think that if we're talking about the deaths, I think that the victim of this first killing, the fact that it is Byakuya, Baron Trump, now very large. He gets stabbed, and it's really sad because it feels like such a logical continuation of his character, and that he's still kind of like a standoffish like prick, but he's very much taken on a leadership role. Like, he's not gonna allow anyone to get killed, and like is really thorough about like screening people for weapons. And I mentioned his like change in appearance because that leaves enough like ambiguity about like how long has changed, how much and how long has gone by since the first game, and it's just really sad to see a character that kind of you saw grow and change throughout the first game and reach like a more heroic endpoint come to an unfortunate sad end, like trying to protect people. It's a really powerful way to start off, and it's a good way to make you feel like we're moving on from Danganronpa. Like, you have your leader, Byakuya is going to take charge, but he's not here anymore, so you got to figure out the rest by yourself.
It's also a really cool setup for a lot of stuff that goes on later on in the trials. It's a nice... This game, I feel like Dangan 2 did a lot better job of foreshadowing in ways that are obvious to someone who was playing it on their first time. I think that Danganronpa 1 definitely had these foreshadowing elements, but those were things that I would have a friend of the stream, Desi, come in and tell me about towards the end and be like, hey, here's some things that you might have missed that's kind of interesting foreshadowing. Dangan 2, I feel like, did a lot better job of presenting these foreshadowing elements, and then you kind of immediately pick up on what they represented. Or if not immediately, like a ways down the line, you're like, oh, now it makes sense why they did that. Which is just, it's nice. It makes everything feel a little bit more satisfying.
Yeah, the writing in that way, the way that they set things up and sort of pay them off is a lot sharper, and I think that they throw in a good amount of misdirects too. So speaking of that, like, I say that Byakuya is the victim of the first killing. I mean, since we're going full spoiler mode, it's no surprise if you played the game to know that what I said wasn't quite accurate, because the Byakuya we see here is actually the ultimate imposter who has no real name, and so I'm going to refer to him as Venom Trump at this point, because I couldn't call the original Byakuya Baron Trump. So, but it's still, I think it's a twist that works really well, and helps supplement another fake out further down the line, and sort of like plants those seeds in your brain as well, and you still get that really nice emotional experience of like, believing that this is the OG Byakuya and being really sad when he dies. And so it doesn't feel cheap to me. I don't feel like that was a twist for the sake of just having a twist. It feels appropriate, the way that they explain it and the way that that character ends up playing out. So
Plus,
yeah,
I like the way it kind of teases that like he knows something, and you're like, ooh, as someone who has played the first one, it's clearly about why he's here. How did he get back? How long has this been? And then it ends up not being that at all. And like he died before he could, or he or she died before they could tell you what they know. And so it's like it all plays in like a really satisfying way that, it serves as really frustrating in the beginning because you're like, damn it, I recognize this character. I love this character. And now he's gone again. And like then it kind of all starts to fall in. And as you said, doesn't ever really feel hollow. It feels very warranted in a lot of ways.
And as far as the killer in this particular instance, oh man, is it satisfying that it ends up being Teru Teru. Fuck that guy.
Oh yeah, fuck Teru Teru. I have to say, as much as I hated Teru Teru, I loved listening to him talk. The English dub of this game, the voice acting is fucking stellar, and I hated Teru Teru. I did not. It's not even like in the Byakuya way where I'm like, I hate this guy, but like he's a great fucking character. No, I fucking hated Teru Teru, but I could listen to him talk for the rest of my life.
So the thing about Teru Teru is that I said earlier that I'm not too fussed about fan service, and generally that's true, probably just because I've watched so much anime that it barely even registers with me. What does register with me,
you fucking desensitized weeb.
What? I'm not going to contest that charge. But what does piss me off to this day is the character archetype that Teru Teru inhabits, which is like the pervert constantly trying to like commit acts of borderline to actual sexual assault for the purposes of facilitating fan service.
It's great too because he's a horny bisexual, which is another fantastic fucking trope.
I know, right? So Teru Teru is kind of a hate sink. He's a lot like, imagine Mineta from My Hero Academia, except maybe a little bit smoother. Like he's like Teru Teru, he's got some class, just not enough to outweigh the rest of his repulsive nature.
Yeah, no, he can go fuck off and get goddamn deep fried. I'm cool with it.
God, and it's so like. I still do manage to feel a little sad for him when he talks about like his mom and his restaurant and all that stuff. But really, it's just like, I mean, just like the last game, it doesn't have quite the same impact that the first execution did in the last game, just because again, it doesn't have that newness factor. But right from the gate, that the game isn't going to skimp on the executions. They're going to pick Teru Teru up.
There's one that they skimp on.
There is one. That's fair. But they do open it with a bang. They open it with Teru Teru getting deep fried in a volcano, and it rocks.
No, it's fucking great. I think, much like the first game, this does a really wonderful job of setting up how deaths work in this, how specifically executions. Because the first one, you're not really sure what to expect, and it's just like, probably, in my opinion, the most brutal death. It's just hard to watch. You see everyone staring at it the entire time. And Leon, I really like Leon as a character, so I was pretty bummed anyway. And then Teru Teru's death is kind of like taking it to the next step. It's not as punchy in terms of a new thing. Like, you're expecting it to be big, but then they're like, we're on a fucking island. I can literally drop a missile full of, like, panko crumbs on this guy and then deep fry him in a volcano. Like, we went from like a baby step and now we're fucking jumping off cliffs, baby. Like, it's just big jump there, and it's great. It's fucking wonderful. It's a really good way of setting things up. And then they kill Mikan and it's stupid, but we'll come back to that. Big oof on that one. She just got fisted into the sun. That's
fisted into the sun. I mean, did it have anything to do with her character?
She gave shots, and so like the shot launched the fist, I guess.
Lame.
Yeah.
She should have gotten like experimented on by Monokuma and like
That's what I
and like
thought
some
was
fucked
gonna
up
happen.
surgery.
Yeah, that was fucking good. What the fuck was that shit? Whatever. Let's talk about the second case.
So the second case, I really like the I think overall one of my criticisms is that the stakes as far as the individual murders felt a little lower or more dispassionate in this one. Excuse me. Yeah, and so this case is a big exception. I really like the setup for this one. I really like the creepy nonfiction game and like the fact that you play it twice, and you have to sort of like piece together what happened previously at Hope's Peak. And I really like that they could just come out the gate, since we already know by playing the first one that the world is fucked and like they are not just regular old high school students. I like that they come out the gate and just tell you that like some sort of memory loss has occurred, and they managed to make that a really good plot point with Monokuma's little horror adventure game. So I really like the setup to this one. Like the character motivations are all really solid here, and the actual setup of the mystery ends up being like pretty cool, pretty satisfying. And what's nice about this game is that like as far as the killers, the first game did a pretty good job in that there were only 2 cases that I completely guessed correctly, like from the outset, like identified who the killer was and like how it went down. And one of those was basically the tutorial with like, you know, the 11307 with it like being extraordinarily easy. But like otherwise, even when I did guess the killer, there was usually some sort of complication that I hadn't accounted for. In this game, I only got the killer completely right one time. The rest of the time, it managed either new information to the trial or like a connection that I hadn't made. It did a really good job of keeping me on my toes. So I did not expect Peiko and her connection to Fuyuhiko, the boss baby Yakuza.
No, yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to say about the case itself. I mostly just want to kind of fast forward to Peko and Fuyuhiko's the Boss Baby Mafia end scene, which was really fucking emotional. It ended up being a lot. It was really punchy. Once again, I played this with the English voice acting on, and Fuyuhiko's voice actor was incredible. I felt really sad, and Jackson made a comparison to Taka and what's his name? Mondo. Taka and Mondo from the first game. And it's a really apt comparison for a lot of reasons. But it hit in a way that I wasn't prepared for. I wasn't prepared for them to be like best friends that are just want like I want you to be more than my bodyguard. That's not what I want. And it was emotional, and I was sad.
Yeah, it was a good scene, and I also like I'm a big fan of punished characters, so I really like Fuyuhiko. He was he ended up being, I think, out of the outside of Nagito and Chiaki, who I would consider like kind of the main characters this time around. Like they're filling similar roles that Kyoko and Baron Trump did in the last one. So outside of them, I think Fuyuhiko is my favorite cast member, just because he gets a lot of good development. He seems to play a similar role to Byakuya at first, like the standoffish, like self-serving asshole guy who like doesn't get along. He gets a metal as fuck scene where he seppukus in front of the class to repent for his actions in this class, in this case, and it rocks. He gets his eye cut out and ends up looking like Punished Snake, so that's pretty cool. His character, like, I like the transformation that he goes through. It ends up paying off really well. And yeah, I think that this case was genuinely very satisfying. And I will say that one of the things I accused the first game of doing is making fun of a trope, like pointing out that it's using a trope and then just doing that trope anyway. And at first with this case, I was worried that it was doing the same thing, because a big plot point is how this case involving a serial killer reflects the first case, and it even shows Monokuma like falling asleep, like, oh man, where have I heard this one before? And at first I was getting annoyed because that's genuinely kind of how I felt at first. I'm like, all right, Dangan2, you better not be doing this again, like seriously.
No, I've got it in my notes. I'm like, God, another fucking serial killer. This is dumb, and especially like this Sparkling Justice serial killer is really stupid too.
Yeah, and so
when she starts talking in fucking emoticons.
He was so dumb. Like, I'm like, oh man, this is a major step down from the Genocide Jack plot. Especially because like that second case in the first game was like one of the strongest, I think, for a lot of reasons. And so the fact that it ends up being a red herring to mask what the actual motivation is, ended up being really effective, and it started planting those. Again, I even made the comparison to MGS2 last time. One of my criticisms of the first game was that its overall meta plot was not enough like MGS2. I was expecting the villain's plan to be like some S3 selection for societal sanity shit. And so this was a big red flag for me, that we're orchestrating events to look like the first game again. And so that got me really intrigued in the meta plot, in addition to the presence of Nagito, who I thought was a fun character who added a lot to the dynamic, because he's the most competent in that way, like by being the best at investigating and like often introducing key evidence that turns the tide of a trial. He's very much like Kyoko in this regard. However, unlike Kyoko, who, with the exception of like the very end, there's some ambiguity as to whether or not she's on your side. It's pretty clear that like she's mostly going to be cooperative and like work with people the whole time. Whereas Nagito is a fucking lunatic. He's a mad lad.
He's just like, we made the comparison to Byakuya earlier, and that's exactly who he fucking is. Like, he's another Byakuya, which that's not an insult, as weird as that sounds, because both characters are fucking miserable and you hate them, but they're so compelling, you can't help but like them. Like, you want to watch them do terrible, stupid things to you just to like rub it in their fucking face later. And like, their motivations are usually semi-complex and compelling. They're really fucking good characters, is what it boils down to. Like, I'm not sitting here apologizing for Nagito, but I'm not gonna apologize for liking his character.
Yeah, and especially because the game introduces this idea that there could be like returning characters on the island, and there's so much about Nagito that leads you to think that he's punished Makoto, that like between his whole motivation about like which by the way, like Nagito's motivation is kind of what I wanted out of the original villain's motivation, of like the balancing of hope and despair and creating greater hope through like overcoming an insurmountable obstacle. Like, that's kind of what I wanted, so I really appreciated that. But what I appreciated even more is his implication that he was going to be like a fallen Makoto who like couldn't deal with the trauma of the first game, because they're both the ultimate lucky student. They have a very similar fashion sense. Nagito's name is literally an anagram for Naegi Makoto Da, or I am Makoto Naegi in Japanese. So the fact that this might be potentially a tragic character who we're already familiar with, who has not only gotten himself embroiled in another death game like Byakuya, but is now like taking the opposite role of the heel, potentially really sad. And I found myself on the edge of my seat, like constantly looking for evidence, like, oh, this line, he said this like Makoto, like that's a clue, like he's gonna be Makoto. He isn't. It's a big red herring, which is kind of sad. That would have been metal, but it's not dissatisfying either, because he's a fun character in his own right. So, and
that plays into having fake Byakuya back there, because it sets up the idea that the characters from the first game might be here. and they're just not. They're not on the island. Well, quote unquote island until the end, but that's a different story there.
We can get into that in a bit, just because I want to talk about the fourth case in particular. We should touch on the third case, just because it's not the best one.
I think... let's touch on the third case. Mikan's execution is stupid and bad. The despair disease is kind of an interesting idea that doesn't really go anywhere within the case until we find out what happens at the end. And the Wizard of Oz thing is weird and dumb. Anything else to say?
I will say that I was sad that Ibuki died, and I was also, like, something about, like, hanging people really creeps me out. Like, it was a really creepy image, that moment of, like, the whole setup of looking into the camera and seeing the person, like, getting ready to hang themselves, really effective. And I think that the whole, like, the crazy plan in order to, like, do the setup stage caught me by surprise. I didn't expect Mikan to be the killer. But yeah, as far as, like, emotional narrative weight, not much going on here.
Especially because Hyoko's death is really just kind of ancillary to everything. It never really dives into, like, what killed her? What was the murder weapon for her? And, like, all that good stuff. It's just super ancillary. The chapter is strange in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I'd definitely call it the weakest part of the game, for sure.
It does make more sense, in retrospective at the end. But it's still, like, you gotta be satisfying in the moment, too. And it just doesn't manage it super well.
On the plus side, the bar that they get killed at is called the Titty Typhoon, and that's hilarious.
God, I cannot believe... I'm like, I saw Titty Typhoon when I went in. I'm like, I need to go there. I have no idea what the fuck that's going to be. And I was not expecting it to be a music venue. But oh my god, Titty Typhoon.
So let's talk about the next one, because the next one I thought was pretty interesting.
No, it was great. We should mention, if you have not played the game and are listening to it now, one character named Nekomaru got shot with an RPG, died, quote unquote, and then came back as a robot as Mechamaru.
Which was awesome. I love that character. He was a lot of fun. His whole thing was that he just wanted to take a shit all the time, and now he couldn't, and he felt sad about it because he was a robot.
I did not like Nekomaru that much. I dug his general atmosphere, but if he talked about shit one more time, I was done. I was not into the shit talk.
You know what? What made it work for me was the fact that he was sad about it when he was a robot. I thought that was really funny. I also did a lot of maybe I looked at it a little differently because I went and talked to him a lot and got his whole, like, team manager story and how he had, like, he wants to bring out the best in people because he had, like, a heart disease that meant he couldn't really compete himself and all that stuff. It was a nice little thing.
Oh, that's cute. Yeah.
But mostly it was fucking rad that he became a robot. What was less rad was how the potentially emotional death scene, finger quotes death scene when he gets turned into a robot for the first time, is completely undercut by the fact that it's like a shot-for-shot recreation of when Piccolo protects Gohan from Nappa in the Saiyan saga, like right down to the dialogue, and it's extremely distracting.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Yeah. No, that whole arc is weird, strange across the board, but it does get us Mechamaru, who's great, and then it gets us Mini Mechamaru, who's even better. So I'm not really complaining.
Yeah, so like what happens next with the whole Funhouse section? It's a nice turn. I really like that for a little bit we get that awesome, like, claustrophobic atmosphere that we had from the original, and how I think that far as motivations, I like how straightforward it was. Like, I'm not gonna let you out until one of you kills because you're gonna starve to death.
It was a little undercut, like the oppressing atmosphere was a little undercut by the fact that it was just visually a nightmare to look at. I think it plays into the idea of it nicely, for, like, aesthetic purposes, like how the game, like, if you were in that house, you would lose your goddamn mind so fast. I did not like looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it for exactly that reason, for like the in-universe. I respect it as an artistic choice, even if it did, like, particularly when I was in Strawberry House, it was just like bright red, and I'm like, oh god, my eyes. Also, why did they have that statue of Sakura? Who put that there?
I mean, I can tell you in universe why, or not, or like thematically why.
Thematically, yes, but like in universe, it wouldn't have been the mastermind, would it? Because why would the mastermind care? And it wasn't made by the Future Foundation because that was explicitly Monokuma's house. So Monokuma must have made it.
I think Monokuma had some reverence for Sakura, arguably.
You could argue that. I feel it. I'll accept it.
Plus, I mean, it is all a mind game. So if he knows that he's just messing with the people in there anyway, why not, put up this weird statue to quote unquote ogre and fuck with them some more as they try to figure out what the hell this is. But he knows that it's a theme for the murder.
Oh, okay. So speaking of this section, before we talk about like real stuff, did you run into a glitch in this part?
No.
Oh, okay, so I don't know if this was something they added to the PS4 version, because a common complaint was that while you're running around Grape House, you will, like, if you run into a certain spot, you will, like, fly into the wall and not be able to escape.
Oh my god.
So they quote unquote resolved this in a way that I think arguably makes it even worse in the PS4 version, because so in that area where this happens, instead of doing anything about it, like to fix the glitch, they just put up like caution tape, like glowing caution tape that said "Do not enter."
I saw that. I didn't know what the fuck that was.
So of course I walked over to it to see what it was about, and then I got stuck in the wall, and I never would have gone over there if it wasn't for the caution tape.
Yeah, I didn't, I walked over the caution tape myself, but the glitch didn't hit me though.
No, yeah, I got stuck in the walls, and I was real mad because I hadn't saved in a long time, so I had to redo all the fucking bullshit, just sit there and, like, mash the square button to, like, skip through all the dialogue to get back to where I was.
Yeah, I lost, my computer crashed one time while I was streaming the first game and lost, like, an hour and a half of progress, so I feel you.
You feel it too, don't you? So let's talk about the case this time, because I really like the way that this plays out. I like that you switch to Nagito, and that gives you a bit of a mind game as you go through the final dead room and think like, oh, we're in protagonist mode again. Clearly, we're only switching to him because we've played as him before. Hint, hint, Makoto. I like that conceit of like the separation between the two houses, and that's why you got to switch to Nagito. The setup was really complicated. The death itself, despite Nekomaru being a robot, surprisingly unsettling.
It was pretty brutal, yeah.
Like his oil is like spilling out everywhere, and it's just standing for his blood. And the way that it resolves, not that it's like supremely emotional or anything, but it is. The solution to this trial was badass as fuck.
A boy Gundam.
My boy Gundam, absolute madman, challenges Nekomaru one-on-one, like doesn't even try to sneak around. And the case hinges on the fact that Gundam sent one of his hamsters to go and use his hamster magic to press the sleep button on Nekomaru, which was set up when he tried to impress Sonya by using the hamster to press the button on the elevator. It was great. It was amazing. And then Gundam dies like a champ because he's like, mere mortals, like, you've won the day. Like, I am the, like, he doesn't back, like, I was totally expecting him to, like, back down and cry and, like, drop the act. No, he was a Chad till the end.
It's fucking great. And, like, the fight, too, is, like, a total Chad move, where they're both just, like, all fucking, like, this is an honor duel. We are here to, like, save everyone else. One of us has to die here. Let's fucking go.
Complete like meathead shonen duel. It's amazing. And the fact, I will say, this one made me feel like a huge moron because the case hinges on who was staying in the soundproof rooms, and I just could not for the life of me remember who was staying in the soundproof rooms. So I just hit everyone until I hit Gundam, and that was the correct one. So I felt like a real fool trying to figure this one out.
Yeah, I ran into that problem too. I think part of that too, though, is also I was really hesitant to be like, it's Gundam. I'm like, please not Gundam. Please. My sweet sweet boy. No.
Oh,
Because I had just maxed him out and gotten his invisible underwear.
nice. Yeah, I was just about to max out Nekomaru, and then he died. Rip.
Yeah.
I had much worse luck than you this time, because last time, like, all the characters that I wanted to max out, I pretty much did, or got close to it. So my luck was much closer to yours.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I will say, I guess, on the last note, I really like the change in Nagito's character, like the setup for his change of behavior, kind of going full Liquid Snake, like, like Hajime, you have no talent, like you are the lowest tier of the survivors, and the way that sets up, like, what the actual truth of the matter ends up being, plays really well, I think.
Yeah. No, the whole fucking case is just, it's wonderful. It's absolutely great. And, like, the fact that at one point, he even says, he's like, I am the ultimate weapon. And he is. He's the one who killed him. Like, they're asking about what the ultimate weapon is. And Gundam's just like, it's me. I'm the ultimate weapon.
What a man. He gets Lion King stampeded, sets up like a Naruto ninjutsu circle, and dies like a champ, carried to heaven by doggos. Man, what an end.
The best part about his whole execution, though, is like it's clearly starting to it's an homage to fucking The Lion Sleeps Tonight for a little bit, and I love it. Like, the opening notes are like doo, 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 and then it shifts a little bit, so it's like it's not quite there, but you know what we're going for, especially as we have Wildebeest charging at him. It's great. That's
Beautiful.
what it boils down to.
Beautiful. So Gundam's a mad lad, but you want to know who's an even madder lad?
Are we talking about Nagito?
We talking about Nagito now.
Hell yeah.
Do you want to start off on this one?
No, you go first, because I want to talk about, like, the case itself.
Sure. So Nagito gets it bad.
Are we talking about case 5?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I want to talk about case 4.
Oh, by all means.
Yeah, I want to, because Nagito is the big central part to this that I want to talk about too. So that's why I thought we were talking about this still.
Right. Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, I think one of the cleverest things, I mentioned, I hate using the phrase Ludo narrative, because it's just such like a meme phrase. But like, usually when I'm trying to use it, it's because I feel like it did something well and like it merged the gameplay and story in a very interesting manner. And so like the gameplay in the trial itself, this is pretty much immediately after Nagito reveals to you that you are not an ultimate, that you're just like a normal dude. And so the game at that point then treats you like a normal dude. Nagito basically takes over the trial and, answers all the hard questions that normally would fall to you. And instead, you're stuck answering questions like, what transports things up and down? And like, that is genuinely the question. It's like, hey, can you spell the word elevator in a Hangsman's Gambit? And like, there's just some like really fucking simple questions like that. Like, at one point you have to figure out like what the time difference is, and you're basically just calculating 16 minus 14 or whatever. And so it's really interesting that it kind of relegates you away from main character status. It puts you as just one of the schlubs in the trial, and I really like that a lot. Like, I was frustrated with it until I kind of thought about it a little bit. I'm like, this is clever. I like what they're doing here, because like they want you to be frustrated with putting the word elevator into a fucking Hangman's Gambit.
Yeah, especially because like this is one of the few cases where there is like no way you could have pieced together exactly what happened, because they didn't show you what the key piece of evidence was. Nagito sees it, but it cuts to black before you can see it from his perspective, which I think is really great.
Yeah, no, like at first I was kind of frustrated with it, because I'm like, that fucking sucks. Like, it's just withholding information for the sake of withholding information. And then like when it all played out, I'm like, all right, you know what? I see what you're going for. I respect you for it, Mabi. So, all right, talk about Nagito's death.
So Nagito gets it so bad, and it's great, and because the setup is that we're finally dealing with the traitor that's among us, the sneaky Pete that's reporting to the Future Town Foundation,
the Mukuru Ikasaba, the 16th student lying dormant somewhere in the school.
I hate you. But So Nagito sets up this plan. He makes a fake bomb threat, and then sets up this trap where the gang finds him tied up with rope, covered in torture wounds, with duct tape over his mouth, and his hand stabbed through the floor. And he's dead. And God rest his soul, you piece of garbage. So what Nagito's actual
literal
plan was,
trash fire.
yeah, you absolute monster. So what Nagito's actual plan was, the mad genius committed... He basically committed suicide, but set up a scenario where nobody would know who the actual killer was. So what exactly does he do? He ties himself up, he takes a knife, and uses a giant spear to go through his stomach when he lets go of the cord. But the spear's not what's going to kill him. Poison is going to kill him. Because first, he has to cut himself up to make it look like he tortured himself, putting duct tape over his mouth so nobody hears him scream while he hacks at his arms and legs. Then he's going to use a Monokuma plushie to slam his hand on the knife to make it look like he couldn't have possibly moved his other hand. And then... In advance, what he had done was he used a special poison, replaced one of the fire extinguisher grenades with the poison, and set up a, Rube Goldberg machine of flames to force someone to throw the fire grenade without knowing exactly who it was, meaning they were the killer and they can't identify it. And the purpose of this mad scheme was to kill everyone.
Yup. Because the fucker figured out that everyone is the ultimate despair, and the only person who should be alive is the traitor.
Who is actually the purest, sweetest soul.
Chiaki's great. Chiaki's the best.
I mean, this was one of the streams because this time I finished the game before Sean, so I was there for this stream, and man, oh man, it was hard. It was hard listening to you, man. I felt those emotions vicariously all over again.
Yeah, no, watching a stream of this, I have to go find some when I finish the third game because I don't want any spoilers whatsoever. But it has to just be incredible listening to somebody figure this shit out as they go through it and realizing oh hey, this character that I fucking love is gonna die, and that sucks.
Oh god, Chiaki gets it pretty bad too. She gets fucking Tetris. She gets crushed by a Tetris block.
But first, she gets Pac-Man'd, and I called that, and I just want that on the record. It is not relevant. I just need it known.
My man Sean is gonna connect things to Pac-Man whenever possible.
Look, the pack is back. That's all there is.
So yeah, I mean, what an absolute mad lad. And with the revelation that you're in a despair rehabilitation program, basically, it makes so much sense. His actions really come together as a character, but he's still trash, but he's got such clear motivations that I can't help but admire what a lunatic he is.
Oh yeah, no, it's fucking great. Let's talk about the fact that we're ultimate despairs in rehabilitation, because I love this twist, and I want to see more of our terrible, terrible bodies and what we've done to ourselves.
God, that scene where you get the Izuru Kabiyama or whatever his name actually is, it's Kuzuru, something with a K.
Yeah.
We get the ultimate hope, the character, because my theory for the first game is that Makoto, it was an MGS2 S3 plan to make Makoto into the ultimate hope, which it kind of was, but that wasn't actually the point. The villain was just fucking around. So now we see that there actually is a hope cultivation plan. We get more of the backstory around the tragedy and the ultimate despair and the followers of Junko from the last game. And so this retroactively makes Junko a more fun villain to me, with the fact that she has all these followers who do just disgusting things in her name. We see our
I was gonna say, I really like that we get to see what these people have done to themselves, and it's fairly clear who did what. There's a reference to somebody who stuck her eye from her dead body, plucked it from her dead body and put it in his own skull, and it's clearly Fuyuhiko. Like, I adore that.
And even so, what I've heard, I'm not sure how true this is, but I've heard that there's a line that implies that like some of the Ultimate Despair followers like tried to fuck her corpse to have a baby with her dead body because they're insane. Apparently the original line in Japanese, and again, this is just kind of hearsay, so I'm not sure how true this is, but the line is like even more twisted, and that like someone took what remained of like her womb and her reproductive organs and like sewed them into themselves to like try and like have her children, and it's implied to be Mikan. Yeah,
that's a rough one.
That's some natty stuff. And even just seeing her hand, like it's this also helps with the fake out. Like when we see that scene with Nagito at chapter 0, when we see that he's attached her hand to himself, like, and the way that he talks about her, like, I'm the ultimate lucky student, like, God, I hate her so much. And it makes sense in the context of Nagito, and that like hope is what he admires, and he's fallen so far that he like follows Junko, the ultimate despair. But also it makes you think that like, oh my God, like I hate her so much, Junko, like this has to be Makoto, right? Like this has to be fallen Makoto attaching his old nemesis's hand to himself. But it works either way, and that's why it ends up being an effective fake out, I think.
Before the game just turns into Mob Psycho 100 anyway.
The game turns into Mob Psycho 100. Your life is your own. Mob Psycho 100 Sons of Liberty. It's still some MGS2 vibes with the hope cultivation plan and all the computer digital simulation twists and shit like that. No, the way that I was way more satisfied with the way the ending played out, including some of the more absurd stuff like giant Junko.
Oh yeah, no, the ending is fucking great.
Yeah, and I think that I mean having the old cast come back with some nice fan service, it was nice to see the real Byakuya again.
I was gonna say, look, unironically, I clapped when I saw Byakuya. I was so happy.
I definitely clapped when I saw it. Especially because I wasn't totally clear on whether Chiaki was being controlled by a human from the Future Foundation, like some of the wording at first. Like I thought, like, so I was a little happy when Kyoko showed up too, because I'm like, just based on how like competent Chiaki had been during the investigations, I'm like, was she like an avatar being controlled by Kyoko, who is now dead? Which I think the game also tried to leave you to believe. So having them show up again, it was an I clapped when I saw it moment too.
No, it was fucking great.
I mean, especially because that final decision morally, and I think it uses that distance really well between you and Hajime in this instance, because in like the ultimate decision of like revive Junko but keep your memories and erase the fact that you were like the ultimate despair but like leave the old cast like trapped in the simulation, that's a lot more effective because it points out that the new cast like has no fondness or relationship with Makoto, Kyoko, and Byakuya, but like we as a player do. Like we don't want to leave them trapped, so it's kind of out of our hands, and I think that's a really interesting effect that the ending has.
It does a really nice job of forcing you away from the character, because like in my mind the answer was obvious. I'm like, yeah, no, just, you know, reset everything, fuck yourself, like the good of the many outweigh the needs of the few. But I think it's interesting because like the game forces you to look at the fact that these people don't see it that way. That this is a very different situation for them. This is not you as the character. This is them. This is who they are. You are playing this character, not you are this character.
And it's really only through basically divine intervention of like what remains of Chiaki's code, basically, that convinces them to like just have a little faith, and you know, they don't have to be who they were. Your life is your own, and it's really great. And I really love the ending of this game.
Yeah. Do you want to do Q&A? Want to open it up?
Let's do some Q&A because we've been going for a bit, especially because of the technical problems, which once again I am deeply sorry for.
Yup, it happens though. So sorry about that. Desi has been in chat over here, fucking dropping mad knowledge of comparisons, and they're really interesting. I'm gonna go through and read some of this really quick, just so that everyone can hear it.
Yes.
So the big thing he noticed here is that there is a lot of comparisons of chapter by chapter from DR1 and DR2. Chapter 1 opens with a helper character stabbed by a ladies' man. The murder is caused by someone wanting to get out to find out the fate of a loved one. Person is taken away to the execution by a collar around their neck. Mikan's execution is kind of the worst in the series. That's not related to what he's saying. I just need to point that out because I 100% think it fucking sucked. Chapter 2. A strong character bludgeons a weak character with a third character being involved in some way. A friendship is torn apart that causes massive character changes later on. Let's see. Chapter 3. A wild, yelly character and a crappy character die in a double death to a greedy, malevolent character. Worst chapter in the game.
Yeah, I agree with that.
4. Talks of a traitor ramps up greatly. 1, 2 in DR2. Very strong characters sacrifice themselves for the betterment of the group as a whole. And then 5. A character who's currently betraying the rest of the group gets stabbed by the spear of Gungir, which I don't know if you caught that. It's the same spear in both games. They just gave it that name in the 5th one.
I would also like to point out that Desi gave a good explanation here about the Sakura statue. Remember, he's trying to tempt the Future Foundation to come into the program. How to do that, but piss them off and put a statue of their fallen friend and just call it Ogre.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I did not think of that. Very good point.
Way more than it seems. It involves fire and explosions. Hell yeah. And chapter 6. Oh, just so damn many. Ultimate Hope versus Ultimate Despair. Junko being Junko. Main character is going to die, but the rest live. Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, those are some really fucking good shit right there.
No, yeah, lots of good shit. I mean, like, Desi obviously knows a lot more about this than we do. Yeah. So let's see some other questions here. Travis, the games are on PS4. You can get a bundle of the first and the second game for like $40, I think. So it's not just on Steam.
They are also theoretically coming to Switch. There's rumors of it. It has not been confirmed.
Yeah.
But there are.
Oh, and also,
rumblings.
Desi, just to address that is a good point, and that's about Chiaki like not being able to tell people. That is a good point, and that's sort of what made me like realize that she was like straight up an AI. I was a little confused at first though because I don't have reading comprehension apparently.
English major, hell yeah,
hell yeah.
Waifu, that should be an easy answer given what we've said here. Because the obvious answer is Chiaki and Gundam.
Yeah, Chiaki, best girl, Gundam, best boy. Yes, 100% in agreement here. Which is actually, I just want to say a little bit about Chiaki's character. I was kind of surprised because I was wary of her character at first, because whenever I see a gamer girl in a game, especially like an anime game, I'm expecting like Futaba from Persona 5, who's like really tropey, memey, cringy, like weeb bait, basically, like otaku bait. Like, oh, this is a girl who's shy and awkward because she plays video games. Like, you can date her, gamer. But Chiaki's a smart character with quirks outside of just being a gamer. Really nice, really sweet. The fact that she's a gamer plays really well with the like postmodern themes of like being in a game, and the fact that she's the ultimate gamer is actually very thematically relevant. So I was really impressed with the way they handled her character. She was probably my favorite character in the whole game.
Yeah, she was fucking sick. I just like Gundam a lot because he's a crazy dude and was wonderful to talk to. Desi, there's been a theory I've seen online, can't really confirm it, where Fuyuhiko is supposed to die where Hyoko did, and she was supposed to make it to the end. The reason they switched it was that Pekko's sacrifice would have been for nothing. Thoughts on if this was a good idea? Fuck Hyoko, so no.
Yes, I'm glad Fuyuhiko stuck around. He was much better of a character, and I agree with their rationale that Pekko's sacrifice would have been for nothing. Also, I saw earlier in chat, I think someone was making fun of my pronunciation of Pekko. Remember, I played it in Japanese, so that's how they pronounce it in the Japanese version. So that accounts for the differences. But yeah, I think that was the better choice there.
Yeah, I mean, just from a character standpoint, it's way more interesting. It's cool stuff. I like going back because like there's a bunch of stuff about this game that you can find out there of cut content and how cases were originally supposed to be, and I think those are really interesting and kind of if you go back, you can see it all. You know.
Are you guys going to play the VR Danganronpa? There's a VR Danganronpa? What is this?
Absolutely. I'm planning on getting VR at some point here, so yes, abso-fucking-lutely.
Well, I am a poor boy with a bad computer, so I probably will not have the chance to, unfortunately.
Should you play the Japanese version or the English voice acting? Not terrible. This is actually something that we can talk about because I played the English, Jackson played the Japanese, and I can safely say that the English is fucking fantastic.
Yeah, so I can't really speak to the English. I only heard a little bit of it on Sean's stream. Overall, the voices sounded pretty good. I think that, either way is fine. I'd say it comes down to personal preference. Like, I am a huge weeb, who just, like, when possible, prefers to, like, hear the original audio with, like, a few exceptions. But it sounds like, I'll trust my man Sean here. I think Desi has spoken highly of the dub as well. So if you're not too fussed, I think you just go with the dub. It's not a case like, I don't know, like Breath of the Wild where the English voice acting is really bad. So
you don't like Wayfish Zelda?
Oh God. Oh, the worst. I'm actually really upset that I'm happy they patched in the Japanese voices, but I was really upset that it wasn't there from launch because Zelda's voice acting was so bad.
Actually, I'm gonna use this as our wrap-up question of Danganronpa V3 when? We will be doing the final game, Danganronpa V3, not next month, but the month after that. So we'll be doing it in June, towards the end there. We will not be doing Ultra Despair Girls because I've heard Ultra Despair Girls is fucking atrocious. And I just have no interest in doing it at that point. I trust Desi's recommendation in that regard because he knows what he's talking about with these games quite well. So I'm just gonna fucking skip that, and we'll do Danganronpa V3 later.
Yeah, just to answer Travis's question real quick about the series is that there are 3 main games, but it's also a little weird in that there is an anime, in addition to an anime adaptation of the first game, there's an anime sequel to the second game, which Desi said had some mixed opinions on from what I hear, so we're not going to really bother talking about it, although I'll probably check it out just out of curiosity. But it sounds like there are only 3 like must-play games in the franchise. Desi can correct me in chat if I'm wrong.
But yeah, we'll wrap it up here then. I've been Sean McKinda. Find me on Twitter at Sean_McKinda. I stream right here at twitch.tv/helpless_Skippy all the fucking time. Other than that, you can find me on my website, isortof.com. I got some writing up there. I don't update that super frequently, but you can also find my writing over on 25yearslatersite.com.
And I am Jackson Keller. You can find me on my friend Connor's stream at twitch.tv/Genghis_Khan_. We play Smash Bros. We talk about Donkey Kong sometimes. We don't have a regular schedule because we're madmen, but we stream late. So if you're a vampire, be a vampire with us too. But if you do need to get in touch with me, the best way to do that is on the patron-exclusive Discord, where you can see Sean's horrific photo of him replicating the Mekon pose. What?
I'm so sorry. Yeah, if you want to support the podcast, keep us ad-free and up and running, as well as get access to our Patreon discount or Patreon Discord and some sweet bonus episodes, which we've got next month's coming out on the first or second week in May, where we'll be playing talking about What Remains of Edith Finch, which I will be playing on Thursday. Speaking of which. So this is a great way to get in touch with us and check out all the bonus content we got and keep us ad-free and all that good stuff. Also, if you want to get in contact with Jackson, you can tweet at the podcast at BADHcast. I run that account on Twitter, so I can pass on any information you have. It's also a great place to keep up to date with what we've got going on and what's coming up ahead. Also, thanks to Lords of the Highway for the use of our theme song. It is Suicide, alternate take off the album High Octane, Low Expectations. They're a great band. Go check them out. They're on Spotify, all that good stuff. Also, thanks to 25yearslatersite.com for hosting our nonsense. You guys are great. There's a bunch of really great writers over there. People who are better at writing than I am. So go read them, support them, give them your clicks. They do a lot of really good analysis. Thanks to our top tier patrons, our stallions, if you will.
It's Julia.
Correct.
Travis.
Yep.
My dear mother, Autumn Keller.
Correct.
And my dear Aunt Summer Skaggs. So thanks, family. We'll be successful one day.
There you go. So thank you to those guys so much. You guys are absolutely wonderful. We really appreciate it. As I said, next week we're going to be talking about Avengers Endgame because, of course, we are. What else would we be talking about? And here's the big thing that you might have been waiting for, which is we're going to be talking about Final Fantasy VII next month.
Hell yeah.
Get ready for that. I know a couple people that are going to be excited to hear us talk about that game because it's one of their favorites. So I'm playing it right now. Jackson's playing it. It's going to be a good time. I'm excited to talk about it because I'm surprisingly charmed by it, and I'm not really an RPG fan. Anything else?
Nah.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging out, everybody, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Don't you go into the ground. Don't you go